Hello, Heart families, Heart students. This is our second art project online, and this is for a Notan project. And Notan, N-O-T-A-N, stands for, I think it's a Japanese word, and it's about the harmony between light and dark. And so on this particular Notan project, we're using construction paper and preferably having a lot of contrast between the two choices of colors of construction paper. And we're going to use pencil to draw, scissors to cut, and then glue, and you will create a very graphic design. So this is a 17-inch square, and I used, it was an 8-inch square on the inside. You could do different sizes of paper, but you need to have a square for the smaller piece of paper. If you use something other than a square for the larger piece of paper, if you use a rectangle, for example, it will have different effects. I chose to do the large square. It would be kind of interesting because you can see how my design would have fit into a 12 by 18 piece of paper. So if you want to experiment with different sizes of large paper or proportions on a large piece of paper, I think that could be interesting. But you want to do a square for the small piece of paper. So this is an example with that high contrast of black big paper, white small paper. This is one that is in progress, and it has more of a subtle contrast, the pink with the purple, and it's in progress. It is not a finished work of art, but it shows you another item you might need as you go is a Ziploc bag. And this is because you'll be cutting out of the smaller piece of paper, and you can slide your pieces as they come loose into a Ziploc bag. That just makes it easy to keep all of these pieces of paper corralled, particularly if you're going to have to clean up your space before you finish. What I'm going to do for the demonstration is a black large piece of paper with this beautiful bright green. I just really love these two colors together, the black with that green. It's just clean and springy, and I'm filming this on the first day of spring, so maybe that's what inspired me to go with this combination. You're going to draw, you think of lines coming in from the side, and you're going to be cutting things out that begin and end on the same side. You do not want to draw a line and cut something out going to any of the other sides. If I go to these sides, I cut the corners off, and I cannot cut the corners off. If I go over to this side, I cut my paper in half, and that will mess the design up. You need to keep this original square intact, and you do that. You take your pencil, you draw lightly. I may draw a little bit darker so that you could see it on the film, but it will work best if you draw lightly, because in your finished project you don't want to see your pencil lines. But I start on the edge and I draw in, and it could be just a simple, so I kind of did a little scroll or a little swirl type of a line, and then I came back out on that same edge. And I can go and do things like that on all of the edges. So I have the beginning. I did lines coming in and going out on all four sides. I could keep adding more, but I'm going to stop here, and then I may add more. Actually, I'm going to do one more here, like so. And okay, so now I'm going to cut. The next step is to cut these shapes out. You want to cut very carefully on your pencil lines. So I take my scissors and I cut in from that side, And instead of like getting all kinds of funny angles trying to go in from out, I'm going to go back to the edge and cut in from this direction. Okay, a couple things about cutting. Doing these little scroll things in here are pretty challenging, and if you have an X-acto knife at home and your parents are aware that you're going to use an X-acto knife, an X-acto knife could help in these little places. If you're not going to do an X-acto knife, you can see that it is doable with scissors, but it takes sometimes some finagling with the angle that you're going to go into that scroll with. So I left this one here because I wanted to show you something else you can do. So this is sort of like a little crescent moon shape going in on this side. And again, I emphasize, I never went from one side to another because you don't want to cut the corners off. So this little crescent shape I drew in and come out on that edge, and I'm going to draw another shape inside that shape, like so. Okay, so just to show you, you could have shapes inside of shapes. You could even do a shape inside a shape inside a shape if you wanted. So let me cut those out so you can see what the effect that that's going to have. You can also cut out shapes freewheeling, like if you don't want to draw it first, you just want to go in and cut out shapes, you can do that. And another thing I want to show you is like an independent satellite shape in here. So and you would need an X-acto to do this, but if you had an X-acto and you wanted to do a shape that's just hanging out in the middle of that space, if you do a shape like that in the middle, you want an X-acto and a cutting board, and these are really, really sharp. Here's the protective cap. When you use an X-acto, you should always, you should never have the blade coming towards your hand. If you hold the paper, you're holding it, and you're pulling the blade in the opposite direction of your hand that's holding the paper. There we go. And I'm immediately going to put the protective cap and put this back down in the tube. So I told you you should use a Ziploc bag to corral your pieces. The only reason I didn't do that is because I knew I was going to use all of them while I was here. So now the fun part is like the puzzle. You put your pieces back together, find their little spaces. Make sure I get all these little pieces. and you decide where on your large piece of paper you want to position this. It could be positioned right in the center, but it doesn't have to be. It could be angled, it could be scooted, wherever you would like it to. And I'm gonna push mine over this way a little bit. The reason being, this is a pretty long piece and they're gonna come out like that. So by pushing this over, that piece doesn't run off the edge of the paper. If you had a piece that ran off the edge of the paper, just when you're all done, you'll cut the little bits off that are on the edge of that go off the edge of the paper. So this is called, this thing that I drew right here. I want you to think of this as the positive space. This is the thing. When I pull it out, the black space that remains is the negative space. And this is a great project for seeing in art, the importance of the positive space as well as the negative space. In art, whether you're talking sculpture, paintings, collage, this is a paper collage, the positive space and the negative space have equal importance. The positive space are the things, the negative space is the space around the thing. So when I do that, you can see the shape on both sides, whether it's defined by positive space or defined by negative space. Equally, you see the space. So the next step that we're going to do is we will be gluing when you're done cutting, when you know you don't want anything else cut out of your square piece of paper, it's going to get glued down. And then these pieces are going to be, you lift them up and flip them over, kind of the mirror image. So I just lift it up and flip it out. It pivots on the edge of the paper where you began and ended your cutting. So those pivot downward, these pivot this way, and these pivot up from this edge. So it comes up, it flips, and you're going to be lining the edges up. Like so. So this one right here, where I did a shape inside a shape inside a shape, so the biggest shape goes out, and then the first shape inside of it comes in, and then that final little shape goes out, so that you get the positive negative effect. So now I have these laid out. I like how it looks. If I thought my design was not complicated enough, then at this point I could go in and cut some more things out. Like I might want to cut something here and have it come out, or cut something here and have it come out that way. The little satellite things that are on their own, you can decide if you want to pivot it the side that's it's closest to, or you could pick, I wouldn't go in this direction because then it pops. If I pivot it that way, it pops off the paper. If I pivot it this way, it would end up over here, which I kind of like that. But I could go down this way, I could even go that way. I think I like this way the best. Over here it would probably end up off of the paper, but I like it over here. I like how it gives a little more stuff over here. So I'm going to just show you how to glue everything down. You want to glue this piece down first because it will define where all the other things go. And if you have cut a lot into it and it's really fragile, one of the hard things will be, or one of the easy things to mess up is it will kind of like bend on you and sort of skew out of position. And the more you cut into it, the more fragile it's going to be. So you just have to be really, really careful. I'm going to flip it over and put the glue on the back. I'm just using Elmer's all-purpose glue, and I'm doing small dots, and I'm making sure the dots are near the edges. If I just put it in the middle, the edges will be loose and will flip out. And I want to make sure the glue gets close to the edges to hold the whole thing down. And I am I'm not even squeezing the glue at this point. When I first turned it over, I squeezed it a little bit and it kind of got it flowing, and I just don't need to squeeze it anymore at this point. I'm getting actually just the perfect size that I like. Okay, I've got glue on all of the edges, the interior edges, including the interior edges. Okay, so you want to work quickly but carefully, and it's okay if it's not in the exact position where I had it, because I can still move these around. But I get it down. If something is sort of skewing, then I just scoot it back into place. And I gently press it down. I can hold my hands on it. The warmth of my hands will help that glue dry, and it just helps me feel. Sometimes it's more of a tactile thing. You can feel that everything is laying down flat. The next step, I'm going to put these back into position because I'm going to put, well, I'll show you. Okay, I put them back into position because the glue, so for the big piece, the glue, I flipped it over and the glue went on the back. For these pieces, the glue actually goes on the front, so it helps me to remember that. If I laid them out here, sometimes I'll put the glue on the wrong, what I found myself doing is I just put the glue on the wrong side. But with them back into position, it helps me remember this is the side that the glue is going to go on. So I'm just going to go through the whole thing, get the glue dots, and I'll do one piece at a time, but I'm going to do the glue dots on the side and then pivot it and glue it down on the outside. Okay, so I've got the glue on this piece. I'm going to pivot. What's really important when you're gluing these down is get them nice and lined up on that edge. So you're creating, even you've broken the edge of that square, but by gluing this in the negative space on the edge of that square, your brain sees a full line there. So you want to be as careful as possible at this point of gluing. If you get sloppy with that line on the pivot point, it weakens the design. So I'm just going to go through and glue all of these down. If you have glue spillage, you can kind of dot it up, but it's best, you can dot up a little bit of it, but it's best just to let it dry. For the most part, Elmer's glue all will dry clear. You won't see it for the most part. Okay, so for this space where I have a big piece with a smaller piece with a smaller piece, remember you start with the largest piece first. Do not put glue on all of the pieces right now. Just do glue on the largest piece. Have it hinge outward or pivot outward. Okay, then the next size piece, have it like out there. Set it there, and then you can put the glue on that. That will help remind you to put the glue on that side. And I'm going to dab the glue. It's a pretty small piece, so I'm going to dab the glue with my finger. And then now this little piece that goes in there, I have a little glue on my finger, so I'm going to dab it on there. Have it hinge and flip over into that negative space. Then the last thing is my little heart here, which it could go down there, but I really do think I like it better over here. It's almost like over here, it's like a little beauty mark. So I go back make sure I get the glue on the correct side, like so, and then whoop, put it over here. Let's see, it should be positioned like over there. About there. My little beauty mark. And then I'll let it dry. Now, this design, I got much more complex, did lots of little things inside of bigger shapes, but I wanted to do one that went a little bit faster for you to see, and that is my bright green Notan on black paper. I hope y'all have fun with this. I'd love to see pictures of what you do. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.